Welcome to the Secure the Perimeter podcast.
Welcome to another episode of Secure the Perimeter podcast. I got my good friend Carl here with me this morning, and I'm feeling really good. I finally broke the barrier and have been running. I love cardio. I love running. So I feel good. I feel energetic and back in my element now. I want to talk to everybody today about three main areas that entrepreneurs struggle in. And the message today is really about, entrepreneurs and growing their business. But I want to identify three main areas that most entrepreneurs struggle in, and then I want to talk about ways that you can get through those struggles. So without further ado, getting right into the podcast, I want to talk about the three main areas of struggle. Three main areas that I see most entrepreneurs struggle in is, number one, lack of customers. A lot of people say lack of cash. Yes, that's true. We'll talk about that in a minute. But I would say that when you're starting out as an entrepreneur, you simply don't have customers. Nobody knows who you are. And so in order to get cash, in order to get money, you have to have customers. Now, when I started my business 15, 16 years ago, you had to knock on doors and make telephone calls to get customers. And that's arduous. And I think that if you want some real tenacity and you want to build a hard outer shell, you should be required to knock on doors and rip the phone up and cold call to get your customer base, because it builds tenacity and it builds perseverance and it builds a hard outer shell that a lot of entrepreneurs these days don't have, and not to their fault. It's just the way things are now. There's so much access to technology. We'll talk about that in a minute. The second thing that most entrepreneurs struggle with is cash. We just said this a minute ago. Most entrepreneurs don't have cash, working capital, whatever you want to call it, a nest egg build up in order to grow their organization. They start out and they bootstrap. What I call bootstrap is, and I did this, so I made this mistake. I bootstrapped my business. Bootstrapping your business is build it as you go, just in raw layman's terms. I do not recommend this. It's stressful, puts a lot of undue pressure on you or others that may be affiliated with you or helping you in your organization, or maybe you have a partner, maybe you have one or two employees already, which I don't recommend rolling out of the gate. I just don't feel like that is the best use of your resources. But to build and grow your company, you have to have some kind of a savings account or some kind of a nest egg build up. And I can get into working capital in a later, in a future podcast. It's not for this morning's podcast, but working capital is a kind of a complex mechanism on how you accumulate working capital. It really is a diverse strategy, because working capital is a mechanism which could entail a lot of different ways that you could accumulate cash around your company. But just say you have this big idea, okay? You always start with a big idea, and then you want to go to a plan, right? You really need to have a nest egg build up, a savings plan build up, so that you could have enough cash to sustain you while you grow your business. And I'll talk about this in a minute as we get into the three things you can do to minimize these three big struggles in an organization when you're growing your business. But you want to develop enough cash and get enough cash around you so that you can be okay. The third thing that most entrepreneurs struggle with are a lack of resources. Well, what do you mean by a lack of resources, Brent? Resources are a lot. There's a lot of resources that you could rely on to grow and build an organization or a company, right? One of the things that you can utilize is resources being a coach or a mentor. I highly, 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 highly recommend a coach or a mentor. And not just somebody who is a naysayer or just a soundboard, but someone who has done it before. I do not recommend, and I'm going to say this with a lot of emphasis, I do not recommend you get a coach or a mentor who has not built an organization. Maybe it's a friend, maybe it's a relative, potentially even mom or dad. If mom or dad has not built a business, look, we all love our mom and dad, but if they built a business, I would listen to them. If they have not built a business or an organization, I would get that advice from someone who has done it before. No diss against moms and dads. No diss against friends or relatives, but you want to take strict advice from someone who has done it before because they know the ins and outs, and I'm telling you, it's intricate. So, you're going to hear all the people say, be careful about this, and you want to do it this way, you want to do it that way. It's almost like concrete. If you've ever heard anyone who's in the concrete industry, they always say that when they go out to do a job, they get a lot of advice of how they should pour the concrete or the way they should pour the concrete. But they're literally listening to people who's never poured concrete before, right? Same in business. You're going to hear a lot of people that want to give you advice about how to build and grow a business. The first question out of your mouth should be, have you ever built and grown a business? And if so, what's that look like? And then shut up. Let them answer the question. Yes, I built an organization. I built 15, 20, 30, $50 million. Built my organization to that level. Great, I'll listen to you. Well, I built a business, but, I kind of went out of business after a year because, it kind of got hard and arduous, and, you're going to hear that stuff too. But listen, take advice from people who's done it before, okay? It's very important that you do this. And so, lack of resources. What other kind of resources are we talking about? We're talking about cash. Cash is a resource. We're talking about talent, people who have done it before, that coach or that mentor. Resources as in people who have been in the industry that you're thinking about getting into. Maybe you want to start a cupcake shop, right? Talk to people, surround yourself around people who have started a cupcake shop or a bakery or have a lot of experience in that industry, right? And listen, you might laugh and say, "Oh, a cupcake shop." There are some very, very awesome cupcake shop ideas that people have grown and developed. Faithful Little Cupcake, if you've ever heard of Faithful Little Cupcake, a very, very successful organization with high profit margins. So it's a thing, and it's real. So I've talked to you about the three things that most entrepreneurs struggle with. Now I'm going to talk about 3 ways that you can combat those struggles and mitigate, or if not minimize, those struggles. Number 1, build a strategy. And I highly recommend a book written by Roger Martin, Playing to Win. Pick that book up and read it. Make that book your business Bible, because that book is phenomenal about the way you should think as an entrepreneur. And I'm not talking just C-suite level. I'm talking about every component and person within that organization should understand the strategy. And the strategy are basically just simple questions that you answer to identify how you're going to go to market, where you're going to go to market, where you're going to play, and the capabilities you're going to need to get there, right? There's 5 main questions. Read the book. I highly recommend it. Roger Martin, Playing to Win. The second thing I would highly recommend is build a sales funnel. So the benefit of entrepreneurs starting out now is you guys have access to all kinds of technology and AI and bots that literally can work for growing your organization, for your, developing your organization and growing your organization. So I highly, highly recommend build a sales funnel. Sales funnels are complex. They're kind of hard to build, but they're easy to build, if that makes sense. There's a lot of components to a sales funnel because you have to identify your target market, and you got to figure out a way to get your target market or your inbound leads into your funnel. Drop them into your funnel, onto your lap, and then drive those leads to then get opportunity and close the sale. The third thing you want to do is build a nest egg. Get the working capital around you. And when I say get the working capital around you, I don't mean don't be crazy like a lot of people and run out and put a second mortgage on your home to grow this business. If you've never built a business, I do not recommend doing that. I'm going to say that again. If you have never built an organization or a business, I would not recommend putting a second mortgage on your home for this business plan that you have, because that business plan could fail, right? And this is why a lot of entrepreneurs are crazy. most entrepreneurs, 99.9% of entrepreneurs, are a slight bit crazy because they take those big, large risks. And so I don't recommend putting a second mortgage on your house because you're literally putting your family in the line of fire of your idea. That plan could go well, and you could grow your organization, and it could vastly improve your lifestyle. But if you're like most entrepreneurs, it's going to take a long time. It's an uphill fight every single day. And while you are growing this organization, while you're building your company, you're going to have that over your head all the time, that second mortgage on your home. So I don't recommend doing that. So build a strategy. Number 2, create a sales funnel. Number 3, have a nest egg. Have some cash set aside to sustain you while you build the organization. And I'm going to say this as well with a lot of emphasis. Build the thing while you work. Okay? Have a job. Have a 9-to-5. Not a problem. And build your big idea, grow your big idea while you're working. Because Mark Cuban talks about, and I know Mark Cuban's been in the news lately, but Mark Cuban is a very smart man. He's got a lot of great concepts and ideas. Mark Cuban does not believe in borrowing money to start a business. And I have to say, I agree with him. Did I start out that way? Absolutely not. I did all the wrong things. I'm going to say that again. I did all the wrong things. I'm sharing this information with you so you know what not to do. And I think in a lot of ways, when I started my business, I set the example for what not to do. I bootstrapped my business. I didn't have strategy. I didn't have any cash set aside. I put everything on credit cards and borrowed money. Not the right way to go. Not the right path. Can you do it? Yes, I did it. You can do it too. However, that's not a good journey to take. It's very stressful. So have some money set aside and build your organization while you're working, right? Build the plan while you're working. Now, again, when you step off the deep end and you're into the drink, you're into the deep, you're still going to have challenges. You're still going to have setbacks. But at least you've got some momentum now because you've built that sales funnel. You got inbound leads coming in. You're closing sales. You've got a little bit of a savings account set up, and you've got some cash set aside, and so you're off to the races. If you do it the way I did it, you're fighting an uphill battle right off the bat. It's like you step off the LPD and you've got incoming fire coming at you from every angle. And that's how I started my business. I do not recommend that. So just some different ideas, I guess. Everybody's got their ideas about how to start a business and how to grow your business. Look, I'm just going to say this. If you're not born with that tenacity or you don't have that tenacity, I do not recommend you start a business. If you can't take a punch to the mouth, figuratively, in business, in life, I do not recommend you start a business because you're going to get punched in the mouth every single day. Every day. So, if you're starting a business, if you're thinking about starting a business, if you've already started your business and you're just looking for some inspiration or some advice, I think this advice I've given you today will go a long way. And if you have any other questions or comments, feel free to drop them in the link below. And we'd love to answer your questions or comments. And until next time, thanks for joining Secure the Perimeter Podcast.